Greetings from Ann Arbor, Michigan, a great state and a great place of the great USA. Welcome to our podcast series, and I am promising you that this series is going to be very enlightening, very inspirational, a lot of fun, and something that will really, I think, help you as you walk your path to holiness. This series is going to have a lot of different things that you probably have questions about, but maybe had the opportunity to ask, especially about religious life. Like, what do they do all day? Who are they? Where do they come from? What's it like when a young woman enters religious life? So stay tuned as we will discuss where sisters come from today. Welcome back to Lumen Ecclesia Digital, or as we like to say here in Ann Arbor, LE Digital. I am Sister Joseph Andrew Bogdanowitz, and this is part of our podcast series, The Truth Will Set You Free. And today is the delight of delights that I get to bring Mother Assumpta along here, my Mother Superior, and even Mother, when I was thinking about it, we have known each other most of our lives, because even when I entered the convent as a postulant, Mother Assumpta was my novice mistress and postulant directress. And then even before that, you had my sister, Sister Mary Teresa, 2 years before me. And so most of my life, you have been my superior. It is a very good thing that we are such good friends, you see. But Mother,
Sister Joseph Andrew, don't tell people how old I am. Good grief.
Well, they think I'm a spring chick, so I mean, they would think that you are too.
Good.
So, Mother, could you, in another podcast, I told them a brief summary of my growing up and the beautiful family that God put me into and how necessary they were in my life to form me and to help me know my vocation. So let's hear about your beautiful family as well.
Really? Oh, it's wonderful. You know, I was thinking not long ago that I was probably raised in the best of times, really. I mean, when I think about it, just to go back, my father was from Poplar Bluff, Missouri. My mother was from Little Rock, Arkansas. But the interesting part about it is that my father's mother was a Catholic, and she died when he was 9 years old. And my father's father was not Catholic. But in those days, just imagine that there were 5 boys and he raised all of them Catholic. And they all remained good Catholics. It's just a mystery to me. But anyway, that grandfather needs a high reward in heaven.
That's right.
But anyway, it was interesting that he said, it sounded like Gone with the Wind, or whatever the movie. But he said that a priest would take them in church for catechism on Sunday afternoon, and a sister would take the girls. But he couldn't wait till it was over because the priest would take him to a baseball game.
Oh, neat.
So it sounds like, but anyway, the mystery is he was probably, as far as my knowledge is concerned, one of the best Catholics I've ever known in my life. And the only thing, he had hardly any formal education. But there is a footnote in one of the documents, and I think it's St. Augustine, who said that God will give you the gift of wisdom in proportion of your love for the Catholic faith. And he had the gift of wisdom. That's all there was to it. The faith was number one. It was black and white. There was no gray matter whatsoever. No gray matter. And, you know, and with all of my education, I think he could run circles around me as far as the faith is concerned. My mother was a convert. But anyway, to go back to, it's interesting, his name obviously was long. My mother's maiden name was Legg, L-E-G-G. So the wedding announcement said the long leg marriage, you know, and we lived on Short Street. So anyway, that made quite a story. So,
that's neat.
But anyway, I was raised in Jackson, Tennessee. At that time, it was a small town, but actually, I go back now, and it's grown into a large city, actually. But the neighborhood was wonderful. There were so many children. All of my friends were Baptist or Church of Christ. Wonderful. We're still friends. And it was a great time to grow up, we played all the time. There was a park near our house, and parents couldn't do it today, but in those days, we would stay hours at the park just playing, and just had a wonderful growing up. But something very significant happened in our lives. We went to, let me tell you, we did not have a car. And I think that's why we're so healthy, because we could walk to school, we could walk to church, we could walk to town. My father was, just a real hardworking blue collar. He was a machinist at the railroad. He walked to work. He always had the 3 to 11 shift. So I had that wonderful Southern cooking at noon. My mother would cook. Oh, I miss it. I'll never get rid of hard vegetables anymore.
I agree with you, Mother, totally.
But anyway, so
that could be another podcast.
But it's interesting. It's interesting that the bus stop. We always walked everywhere, but once in a while, if it was raining, we'd catch the bus, and it stopped right in front of our house. To show you what kind of a neighborhood. We didn't think it was strange, but I looked back and I said it was a little odd. In the wintertime, people would come to our house and say, could I stand in your living room and watch for the bus? So when we would turn the corner, they would go out and catch the bus. So that was the most normal thing. Sure, stand in our living room and wait for the bus. So it was, I know it was really wonderful. And we went to a Catholic school. The Dominican sisters had a little St. Mary's school. And my fondest memories of the school are actually religious, like the May processions, 40 hours devotions, just that wonderful upbringing. But it was interesting because my father knew that he could never do anything monetarily for the church. I mean, we certainly didn't have it. There were 6 of us. 2 boys and 4 girls. And he said, there is one thing I will do. I will give all of my children a Catholic education. Now, that was not simple because it meant that he would have to send us in high school to a boarding school.
Wow.
And I do not know how my parents did it. Financially, I do not know. I'll never understand except sacrifice. But so all of the girls went to St. Cecilia in Nashville, Tennessee, the boarding school.
Which would have been how far from Jackson?
It was, since you worked for the railroad, we had passes on the train. So we would take the train. So it was about 3 hours maybe in those days.
Wow.
And the boys went to St. Bernard's, to the Benedictines in Coleman, Alabama.
Wow.
So we were all given a total Catholic education at great sacrifice to my parents. So I just will never be more grateful. I was thinking too that my childhood, To Kill a Mockingbird, it always reminds me of that neighborhood. We had our own Boo Radney. I kid you not. As children, there was a house around the block that it was a big house. And it had an upstory, a porch, and there were trees. It was always dark. You never saw anybody. We actually believed that a man lived in there that was half human and half frog.
Did you run past it like
we did?
Scout did?
It was so scary, but so much fun. Of course, he didn't turn out. We never saw him, but we really believed that as children. That so we would just go by that house and think. But it was great. It was just great. So that puts it in a nutshell about. And my mother came into the church and was also a wonderful Catholic, so it was great.
Now, Mother, you had mentioned growing up in the South, and on another podcast I had told my story, and you can tell by our accents we both grew up in the South, and we loved our Southern heritage and still do. But you had mentioned that very similar to my story, but I'd like you to talk a little bit more about this, the fact that most of your friends, and certainly the kids in the neighborhood that you all did play in the side yard, in the park with, were not Catholic. They were Christians of various denominations. But did this, how did your Catholic faith and their Christian faith congeal? And did these topics come up in discussion or?
You know what is wonderful? Like, for instance, as I got older and, you would date it or went out, there was prejudice. But, I discovered that when you love people, you transcend prejudice.
Beautiful.
There was absolutely no prejudice among us because we loved one another. We were the best of friends. And our house was just like open door. I mean, kids were in and out all the time. It was just open door because there were 6 of us. So it was just, but it dawned on me, when you really know people and you really love people, there's no room for prejudice.
Exactly.
I mean, we just transcended that. We agreed in those days, we agreed on morality.
Yes.
Now, you can't say that today, but we agreed on morality. We just did not talk about we certainly had theological differences, but it was so funny because we always had holidays on holy days. I was so proud of having a holiday.
Exactly.
I was just so proud of being a Catholic.
Exactly.
And in the summer, they would have Vacation Bible School, and they would come home with these cute little bracelets and things they'd make. But I was never jealous of that. I mean, because I was so happy being a Catholic.
Beautiful.
I was just I thought I was so proud. And I loved to go, the big crucifix in our church.
Yes.
I just loved everything
Catholic. The statue of Mary and the Stations of the Cross.
So
now, in my family, every Sunday we would spend with my very Southern Baptist grandparents. And so after Mass, we would grab a bite to eat back home, and then we would head out and we would spend it. But at a certain point in time, we had to leave because they had to get to their Sunday evening devotions. And then we remember their Wednesday evening. We wouldn't go over there on Wednesday because they would be gone. Do you remember those things also in the South?
Well, near our house, there was a Baptist church. And our friends, my sister Martha, we were very close. She was 2 years older than I, but anyway, it was wonderful. So on Sunday night, across the street from the Baptist church, there was a wall, and we would sit on the wall waiting for our friends to get out of the Baptist church. And we thought, oh no! And in those days when you didn't have air conditioning, all the doors would be open, and we'd be sitting over there watching. Oh no, they're going to sing another song, and they would sing these songs that are still they're being sung in the Catholic Church now. How great thou art and Amazing Grace and all that.
Oh, Rugged Cross.
So we would say, oh, Rugged Cross, and I think, oh please, because when they would get out, we would get together. We'd walk downtown and get a slush or something. It was very exciting. Very
sure.
But it was just so much fun. It was just so much fun, and. But anyway, that was, so I, had a lot of experiences with, the Church of Christ and the Baptist Church.
Beautiful.
But we still are, good friends. And
staying on this topic just a little bit, because so many of our viewers, some will be Southerners, others will be Northerners, and won't even have the experiences that we were referring to. And yet when I look back on them, kind of like the Holy Days of Obligation, and we would wear medals and we'd dangle them and we'd go, well, we're Catholic and you can't have these. But the innocence of childhood, that they were so interested, and we were also interested in their faith and how we were different and why we were different, and yet we could be such great friends. Do you think that any of those experiences, especially as you grew up and entered the convent, et cetera, did any of those kind of make you that much more zealous for the faith, for the good, the true, the beautiful, as another podcast is on that particular topic? Did it make you more zealous to get God out in the world?
I hope it did. I'm just thinking, certainly. And, a thing that I'd, probably miss as far as my friends are concerned, because when I was, I think when I went to St. I must have been like 12 years old, I guess, when I went to boarding school. So I missed those high school years, except in the summertime. So I missed those years, but it was always to, come back and to see your friends and to be with your friends. And it was wonderful. But a lot of that, let's say the school experiences was not shared, which would have brought out a lot more than, what you probably experienced, because then my friends became Catholic friends because I was in a Catholic boarding school. So they became
and your entire 24/7 was was lived there with sisters who ran the boarding school.
And I will say, it's interesting because my sister Martha, I was just home and she talked about that. She said, ever since I was little, all I wanted to do was to get married and have a family, have children. Mm-hmm. And all I didn't know it was vocation, but I loved the sisters. And I think that was a vocation even in first grade. If they asked me to stay after school, and we could do that in those days, she went home. But if they asked me to stay after school, I would have, that was my joy. I would have done anything for them. And when I look back, I think that was a religious vocation, which I had no clue at that time. But the fact that I loved boarding school, I loved being with the sisters, I loved, anyway, I just think that it's...
I know you've mentioned before, too, about your early recognition or the dawning of your religious vocation when your sister Martha, who you are very, very close to, would have her hope chest and picked out her silverware and her plates and the patterns that she wanted of all these things. And I can remember coming home and Mom one time saying to Sister Mary Teresa and myself, well, this is a hope chest and you all are going to be able to fill it with things when you all get married. And we looked at each other and we go, you fill it, because we both were already like, I'm not really interested in that, Mom. I'm not going to need this when I enter the convent. Did you have that same reaction to Martha's hope chest?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness. She had the tackiest things, and I'm sure they don't do that today. But, one thing that really stands out in my mind is that they don't do that now. But in those days, what happened is that young girls would pick out their silver pattern. Now, as I say, that's, but anyway. And a lady would come to the house, and then for a wedding shower, people would give you a piece like a fork or not. I'm sure that's... Sure. This is ancient history, but nevertheless, I will never forget the lady came to our house, and Martha was, she just wanted to be, she just couldn't wait to get married. But she was, and I'll never forget, because I never talked to her about my vocation, never. I never talked to anybody about it, because nobody thought I should. They thought she would enter the convent. Honest to goodness, even the chaplains, I say, talked to her. She was wonderful.
Yes, she is. She
really
truly
good.
is.
And I was kind of rambunctious. But anyway, nobody ever said anything to me except at the last moment. But anyway, so this lady came down to our house, and so she's looking at it. And I'll never forget, she turned to me, she said, well, I was 2 years younger, and I always consider myself 2 years older than I am because I kept up with her. I did everything she did. But she said, why don't you pick out your pattern? And I didn't say anything. I thought, I will never get married.
You just knew in your heart. I just knew in my heart
that that was the most boring thing. I mean, not that I'm saying marriage is boring. I don't mean that at all.
But for you, as God was working
out, to pick out a pattern was, oh, good grief, no. I didn't say anything to her, but I was just sitting there. That made a deep impression on me because not knowing that I had a religious vocation, something in me told me, this is not for you. God had to be very specific with me.
Now, I remember, again, my 2 year older than I sister, who I think you would agree was more made by God to fit into the convent life. I was by far the rambunctious, so maybe that's why we get along so well. But one of the reasons. But in any case, I remember when Mom made her postulant outfits. And you know how nobody really appreciates the postulant outfit except for the fact that you get to wear it for 1 year and then you get this beautiful Dominican habit. So she put them carefully away in her suitcases, and at night I would go in there and take them out and I would put them on and I'd look in the mirror and say, this is what I'm going to look like in 2 more years. So I can remember sharing those incredible joys with Sister Mary Teresa. But I want to go back a bit also, Mother, to your parents. I had the privilege of knowing them and you had the privilege of knowing mine. And I want to say to our viewers, our listeners, how essential, and again, we have been pounding this in many times through these podcasts, how essential parents are in raising their children. And you had mentioned one of the important things that I think is so essential for parents to show their children And they don't say it, but they live it. And that is their ability to sacrifice for love of their children so that their children will be raised really in a deep self-knowledge and a deep love of God and knowledge of God to the extent that they're able to at that moment. Tell us a little bit more about some of the sacrifices that you grew up just kind of quietly watching your parents. In particular, I kind of think your mom. You've referred to your father. What about your mom and her dresses and her?
My mother was an orphan, and she was raised. She had very little education also, but smart. I wonder if where they would have been if they'd gotten an education, because they were both very, very smart. But she loved being a mom.
Yeah.
And she loved keeping house. She made our clothes. We always had lovely clothes because she made them. And, but, I think just seeing her love, her fidelity of being a good mother.
Yes.
A good mother. And I can remember even when she was making my postulate outfit, I was just having such a good time this is the last summer, I'm going to live it up this summer. She said, would you please try on, Mother, I just don't have time. I just don't have time to try it on.
Oh, my goodness. We were both very rambunctious.
A pain in the neck. But she was just faithful. She was just faithful. And I see just her everything was family. Everything was children. Everything was sacrifice. She sacrificed everything for us, and it was just beautiful to see that. They both just were the greatest witnesses to me. And I think, like you say, they weren't ostentatious about their faith. I mean, we did not even say, because my father worked from 3 to 11, we didn't say the family rosary together. So once in a while, I'd sit with my mother. But of course, we were in boarding school. But our faith was not, it was just lived. It was just lived.
The real deal.
I mean, it wasn't ostentatious. I mean, they weren't, except when things got a little crazy, after Vatican II. Oh my gosh. My father, I mean, as I said, it was black and white. He read a lot, so he was very informed.
Yes.
And very informed about the faith. And he said, I give you all a Catholic education, and you don't know a thing. What?
Don't you love it?
But he was right. He was right. He could pierce junk. How you kind of go through this, kind of this, not basically, but, you'd think, how there was no edge as far as he was concerned. This is right. This is the teaching of the church. You duggun kids,
Gotcha.
But anyway.
Now, you have referred to him, you have made the analogy between your dad and Hilaire Belloc, the great English Catholic apologetic and writer. And in what manner would you say those two were very, very similar?
Okay. Again, I give an example for Hilaire Belloc. He's one of my favorite, and especially the book written by Joseph Pierce of Old Thunder. And I think about Father. My father was Irish, and he had a temper. But the thing about it is, right after we would get, bawled out, he would be hugging us. And I actually dreaded the hugs more than I did the temper.
Not me. I love the hugs.
No, I didn't. But anyway, just a quick story about Hilaire Belloc in this story. I love it. He was running for the Parliament in England, and it was time of very prejudice, because I can't go into all of it. But anyway, so his advisors said, whatever you do, do not mention your Catholic faith. Just, you don't have to, just transcend it. So what did Hilaire Belloc do? He had his first public speech in a Catholic school, and this huge audience. He was running for Parliament, and he said, I want you to know, he said, I'm Catholic, and I, if possible, I go to Mass every day. And he held up the rosary.
Oh, beautiful.
And he said, I say the rosary. And he said, if you don't vote for me because I'm Catholic, then I want to thank God for the privilege of not serving as your
Good for him.
And there was dead silence. He said something like that. And then everybody stood up and applauded.
Oh, good. Did he win?
He did. He won the election.
He got the election.
Won the election. But that was my father. I mean, there was absolutely. Some days you think, oh, Daddy, he was not politically correct.
I understand.
At all. Mm-hmm. He was not politically correct.
And yet, between your dad and your mom, which one would you say was more the one who would hug the fastest and.
Probably my father.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he had that inside him. So again, to our audience, the beautiful blend of being who you are before God, but never betraying truth and the necessity of truth. And we as Dominicans, veritas, you've heard this over and over again. Mother, I would like to begin wrapping this up with one story of your mom when she was older and she could no longer really take care of her house, but she was living in her own home. And so I and one other sister, Sister John Dominic, had the privilege of going with you to help. Were we painting and waxing? And we were doing everything we could within the short amount of time that we had. And your mom was sitting over there in the chair, and she was watching us, and she was smiling and thanking us. And then at one point, we said, well, we're finished. She goes, no, right over there, you missed. And she pointed out. And I think you kind of take after your mom in seeing some of those details, whereas I would be saying, oh, it's beautiful. Oh, how nice. Oh, who cares about that little spot? No, and you would be just like your
That's
mom.
True. That's true. That's true. No, I agree. I guess I do take after my mother.
Yes, you do. Yeah. You do a lot. And your father.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, Mother, we really want to thank you. This has been so delightful, and we couldn't wait to get you on this podcast because, again, you are such an incredible daughter of the church and have led so many other daughters of the church, and so many of those daughters out there watching this will be following in times to come. And so why don't we end this, Mother, with you leading us in a Hail Mary.
Hail Mary,
full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Thank you to all those listening and viewing, and stay tuned for another podcast in which we will discuss the beginnings of our community. God bless you, and thank you so much. So if you like the material on this particular podcast, then please click on the next podcast for another fascinating story.